even though this is a nonpartisan race, the last time the local Republicans actually endorsed a candidate, and they're not supposed to do that. And so I agree. The two-party system, to me, often seems to get in the way of a real conversation, which is what we need
all
to
the
have.
time.
We don't speak to each other like neighbors anymore. I don't think Facebook helps that, and Twitter certainly doesn't either. But we're certainly in a very divisive time, making bold changes all over government.
Yeah. What would you say is some of the important issues? Because obviously there is an incumbent mayor right now, and there's got to be some motivating factors for you to run. What are some of the key issues that are of concern that you would be looking to change should you get into the mayor's seat?
Yeah, well, when you bring politics down to the local level, this is a tiny little town. I mean, it's 38,000 people, and which means your mayor's part-time. Your mayor typically, they get paid $40,000 a year. This is not a job. We want these qualities locally. We want someone who's young, with business acumen, lots of time to spend, but we're going to pay them $40,000, and you're going to be scrutinized, and all the skeletons are going to come out. We're going to call you terrible things. Who in the world would do that job? That is crazy. And so there's so much misinformation too. So what I'm hoping I can do is, for one, this is not really a campaign topic, but I want to humanize this position. I'm not a perfect person. I got 2 kids. I make mistakes.
That was a mistake. That was your first mistake, was having the 2 kids. Is that what you're saying?
I feel like that sometimes. I have a 16-year-old.
I have 2. Wait, how old are yours?
16 and 18.
Okay, so I have 24 and 18.
Oof, yeah, so you're just a little bit ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little older, but and you're only as happy as your least happy child. And when you have teenagers, they're miserable. I didn't like teenagers when I was a teenager, and I haven't become more fond of them as I've gotten older.
Yeah, they are. But my experiences in small towns are your elected officials typically campaign on fixing roads and parks and lower taxes, but they really don't understand how to do that, because they either haven't been in business or they don't study other cities. And so I've made a lot of contacts. The mayor of Pensacola, Florida is a friend of mine. The mayor of Greenville, South Carolina is a friend of mine. He actually donated to the campaign. And these are cities that are famous for how they've turned their towns around. And so, I don't know, I'm following this position like I would with a business. And I ask a lot of questions. I call cities and I say, how do you do this? And I've also seen here locally, my family's been here for 80 years and owned business for 80 years. And it feels impossible for me to get a building permit. It feels impossible to open a business. And I've had to get rules changed. I've had to hire attorneys from other cities to help me here. And my thing is, if it feels impossible for me, it is impossible for someone without connections and time and have realistic expectations. And we don't have a vibrant city by accident. And you don't have a vibrant city with only a handful of people can navigate the systems. It's impossible to open a business here on part-time efforts using money you've saved. I can almost guarantee, because it was almost impossible for me with millions of dollars from selling software companies to open a brewery here that they wanted to have. And so those are all the things that I want to fix. There's understanding the budget, fixing the permitting process. No one should be scared when they receive a code enforcement letter. Let's start there. When I build a customer support team, part of the training is you don't send an email that you would send to a customer that you wouldn't send to your own mother. If your mother had a question, how would you reply to her? And so that level of customer support training, I don't think happens a lot of times at the city level. And you create this toxic environment where it's hard to hire people. Cities are just like any other organizations, money in, money out. They're a little clumsier, but it's the same sort of customer service processes, documenting processes that any organization needs to have. So to me, it's, I build software companies. I own breweries as well and a wedding venue. And so I get excited the more I dig into it, because, we're not a big city. These are not overly complicated issues. It's just customer service and it's processes. And that's what I do. So,
okay. So let me ask you this. What's it like up there in terms of what we call overdevelopment, where the developers basically it's nonstop? Every commissioner is on the take from some developer somewhere. Yeah. They're not only are they overbuilding, they're cutting corners. Like, this is absurd. They don't do their ecological repair that they're supposed to do. They're supposed to replant what they're supposed. They don't do any of that, and they just keep building and building and building, and it's like it's horrible. 2
things. Sustainability can mean financially. It can mean ecologically too. So sustainable both ways. A lot of times it's hard to regulate good taste. And so a lot of that, when you talk about, like, you have around the coastline, you have a thing called watersheds, which are basically like if you have a little bayou, past the bayou is a little valley. In Florida, our valleys are like, 3-foot drops. They're not like cliffs like California would have. But a lot of times developers don't understand, if you close that watershed, you're going to have flooding. And we don't really need as many stormwater ponds if you keep your watersheds open. So really smart cities are realizing the importance of watersheds and the importance of prioritizing native species of plants, so bees are happier and things like that. And so, it's sort of like, people don't realize, when you're ignorant to some things, you just don't know what you don't know, right? And so I think that's a part of having a good planning department, is saying, hey, and we're going to, at your certificate of acceptance, we're going to double check that you planted native species plants, because you can't regulate that through the permitting. If you file a permit with a landscaping plan, if you don't check it at the end, they're not going to do it. So I don't know, those kind of things. Tasteful development can happen anywhere. Seaside is actually a really interesting development. It's kind of hoity-toity now, but Seaside, Florida, they do some interesting stuff, even with stormwater ponds. Their stormwater pond, it all goes down to this sort of half circle. If you watch the Truman Show,
we've talked. Peter took a picture of it and sent it to me when he was just there. Yeah.
So you've been there.
Perfect, but yes, it's cute.
Yeah, the half circle of commerce is their little downtown, and that little amphitheater in the middle is actually their stormwater pond. And so it floods when it rains, but you're not having concert when it rains. So it dries itself out, and the next day you can have a concert. And so cities are getting really smart with stormwater ponds. There's a lot of money and grants in stormwater ponds and runoff. And so I love all that stuff.
May I suggest municipal rainwater collection, please?
Ooh, I love that. Yeah.
We had somebody on a while ago who's an expert on this, and we did this whole thing about it. Like the amount of water that rushes down our roads that goes to nowhere, we could be using that for like up to 60% of our gray water usage. Just so you know, municipal rainwater collection.
And if you want to talk about where conservative America gets it right, where liberal America doesn't get it right, something like municipal rainwater conservation is something that conservative America would be like, yeah, that makes sense, we'll do it. Whereas in liberal America, it's like, oh no, we have to go through this checkpoint.
Liberal places actually regulate whether or not you can collect rainwater. Florida is actually very good about it. We have the ability to do it legally, like that, but people don't do it. And I don't understand, in a place that floods, why would we not collect rainwater and use it? I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Well, for Florida, probably one reason we can dig 6 feet down and hit water. So it's like, we're a giant aquifer, basically.
Exactly.
Now, what I love, one of our breweries, we have this little tiny back area before it goes to the road, which is a little 4 by 50 foot area, and we cut the concrete out and we made a bioswell, which is basically 12 feet of rocks, and so the rain comes off the building, hits that, 4 feet by 50 feet by 12 feet, and the water just disappears into the ground, and so that, as opposed to it running 100 yards that way, it hits the back. And so that costs like $5,000. And so I think people just don't know. Architects don't. So every industry needs this sort of continuing education, and architects don't know how affordable a bioswell is for someone. It's really not that expensive. So I'd love to see how cities encourage more of that. You get whatever you make easy and you encourage.
Yeah.
And so
it's sticks and carrots. I agree. And that's the problem. And it really is. These are policy choices. That's what people have to understand, whether locally or nationally.
Right.
These things are choices, and it's priorities. And one of the things about the places that are the red places and the more conservative places is they do prioritize the environment. The places that that's why I like Sanibel. That's why that's the beach I like. I don't want to go to our beaches here. They're disgusting. You go to the places that are red, and there's a better care for the environment. It's just, and less overdevelopment.